So, what would you say, for someone out here who is maybe struggling with credit, or they might have derogatory items and things like that? Money might be a little tight. What would you say to that person to get out of their situation that they're currently in? What would be your advice for that person? Like, what should they do? Should they, make the investment in, repairing their credit? And kind of what would you say would be like the downsides or the consequences of?
Man, one of the first things I would do is I would say, helping that person get their mindset right and their focus right? Because they gotta start to understand the importance of why they're doing this, right? So they gotta start to understand why credit is important. So one, they're gonna have to start doing some research, some education, um, as to what benefits you get from having good credit, and then start researching the factors that go into credit. Like just and I have an ebook explaining this. So basically, just educating themselves, and then also getting with a professional. Getting with somebody who's in the financial literacy, in the credit space, um, who can actually guide them on the steps. And it's very simple steps. Credit is very simple, where you just removing negative items, and then you're building positive accounts. So if they need help removing negative items, I'm sure I can help them. And if they need positive accounts, I'm sure you got it. So it's just a mix of the two. So you can't just. A lot of people think just removing or deleting negative items is going to raise their score when it really doesn't, because they have to put positive things on their credit report. So I just tell people to look at it like, look at removing the negative items like expunging a criminal record, and then look at adding primary accounts like as if you were adding work references to your resume.
Exactly. Building up that history.
Exactly. So that's what I would say do. And man, what was your next question? What was the other?
Even myself, because I had a different path than you. You kind of, understood early on, like how imperative, having that 100% on time payment is. I kind of got stung and learned the hard way, when having bad credit, not being able to do certain things, not being able to go and get a car at a decent interest rate, or being able to rent an apartment. How imperative would you say it is, just in the society that we live in, for people to, maintain a good credit profile? And like, what are some of the consequences? 'Cause we know, wealth building and credit, to a certain degree, kind of go hand in hand. So,
Yeah.
what are the consequences of not, building up your credit profile and just having a good track record when it comes to repaying your debts and managing credit? What would you say?
Man, I would say, man, and I've seen some horror stories. I have some horror stories of people who I dealt with. So I mean, just having bad credit, I watch it not just hold people back from home ownership, so it keeps them renting, meaning it's going to keep them poorer than the average person who's a homeowner, because now they're not able to save money, they're not putting equity in anything. Also, seeing people having to pay 29% interest on cars.
Wow,
So
that's crazy.
I've seen people buy cars for like 15,000 and have $600 car notes. And then of course they're never able to pay that off. So then it's just going to go to the next car they buy. They're going to roll over negative equity from a car they no longer have to put on a new car, and then it's going to be harder for them to pay that one off, because they'll probably have not learned and probably got a high interest rate again. So with high interest as well. Also, having bad credit. I had a friend, and he called me to help him with his credit, because his job said that he had to do it for his clearance. And after a couple months, they ended up letting him go because they didn't see the results fast enough. And he ended up letting me help him. We ended up raising his score in a couple months, got some negative items off, and they called him back.
Wow.
And he ended up getting his job back because they said they saw that his profile improved. So they were like watching him. He thought he was just dead in the water and his job was over. But they were, I guess, looking at his report to see when his improvement was going to occur. And then they let him get his job back. So, it can literally change your life, and it can hold you back from a lot of opportunities, because I have a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs, and they have different business endeavors and different ideas that they want to do. And a lot of times their credit profiles aren't at a place where they can even execute or act on these ideas that they have. So, that's another thing that's, is just important to be able to, maneuver with your business endeavors and things like that. And it just gives you another level of freedom. There was a time where I had a home where I was flipping, and I was losing a lot of money, just losing a lot of money. And I was able to leverage my credit so I didn't have to take as big of a blow up front, and it just allowed me to kind of like float a little bit. Even though I was in a bad financial position, I was still able to leverage my credit, pay my bills on time. And that's the only reason I was fighting to keep the house from going under, was because I did not want to have to go through a credit rebuilding stage, because I know how powerful it is. And when I want to go buy a car, or when I want to go buy a home, or when I want to go, even if I were to go get a job, or anything, I don't want someone to use that against me as a way to charge me more money for the same exact purchase. And that's the unfair thing about credit. And that's part of the, that thing people say, the rich get richer and the poor get poor.
Right.
It's honestly because the rich are putting themselves in a position to take advantage of things. So that's another thing people just got to realize is, you got to put yourself in a position, the best financial position, be in the best financial position yourself, so that you can take advantage of these things and you don't have things holding you back in life. And,
Wow.
and that's a way I think now, they're able to use prejudice to keep us out of certain areas by looking at our credit scores.
Wow, you just dropped a handful of gems right there. And some of the things I actually went through personally when you were talking about your credit being used in like a job, for example. I worked as a federal government contractor, and that's one of the things with the clearances, because when they're looking at your credit, you got to remember your credit. It says a lot about you, right? I mean, you could be the best intentioned person, but with these jobs, they're looking at your credit, and they're really looking to see, okay, is this person financially in trouble? Would that compromise their integrity? Not to say anyone would do that, but that's just the way that they're looking at it. So that's a good point. Also, being charged more for the same items, right? Whether that's a car, whether that's a mortgage. I mean, you could have two identical houses right side by side. One neighbor could be paying, one amount, another neighbor could be paying substantially higher. So by not having good credit, it's going to cost you more. We always talk about this. Whatever the investment might be in terms of fixing, repairing, building your credit. And by investment, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about time as well.
Yes.
Because it is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a back-end cost that you're going to pay for having bad credit through higher interest rates, and less options too. That's another thing.
Definitely.
When you have good credit, you have more options. And then the most important thing I think you pointed out was that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, being able to seize opportunities when they present themselves. So by having good credit, it makes things much more, smoother in terms of transacting. If you don't have access to credit, you got to do, 10 steps, try to juggle things in order to facilitate a move. Whereas if you have good credit, it's just one step, right?
Yes, sir.
You could just do it. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful things. And I realize that as well now, having access to credit, it just makes your life much easier. You can do things without having to jump over as many hurdles. And I think that's the problem that a lot of us, especially in our community, face is with having bad credit. It just reduces the options that you have out there. So
Most definitely.